right, good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we're going to bring in our Facebook groups. We're going to bring in Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons this morning, just because I'm sure they want to talk some Senior Bowl, some Tom Brady, and some Sean Payton, and maybe possible coaches. And we've got Scott Kennedy Sports on Facebook too. If you can't tell, a little under the weather. I like getting these winter colds and stuff. But welcome in everybody. This is Coast to Coast Football. I'm actually pretty close to the coast right now, down on the Gulf Coast, down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. And all kinds of news is happening without just the Senior Bowl. I was ready to just talk prospects, Nick, and then Tom Brady announces his retirement. Sean Payton, he ges hired. Has D'Amico Ryan's been officially announced yet? So, we're getting closer here. We have 2 openings left. I think we've got Arizona Cardinals and the Indianapolis Colts. And we'll see which one of those gets filled next. But I think there's lots to talk about. Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. Celebrated a big announcement from Natalie's career yesterday, so stayed up celebrating that. A little champagne and hanging out and ordering in some Italian food and getting ready. A week from today, I'll be flying to Big Island, so good times just keep rolling. Broncos new head coach. I mean, life's good. Winter can be pretty damn dreary up here in the Pacific Northwest, but life's pretty damn good.
Well, there you go. You've got, it was a busy day yesterday,
Yeah.
all around. And just a little programming note. Again, you can find all of our pods for that we do on these Wednesday mornings live on YouTube and Facebook. But you can also go to coasttocoastfootball.com in order to find how do I want to listen to this after the fact instead of maybe I want to just do a podcast. Want to say hello to some folks in the chat that are coming in. As the internet reaches out and alerts everybody and they start coming in, our numbers grow. So let's say good morning to some of our early folks, like Michael Ranchio. He says, good morning. Good morning, Scott and Nick on Coast to Coast Football. Good morning to you. And Michael's coming in with a fist bump super sticker. So fist bump right back at you, Michael. Appreciate you coming in. As a reminder, you don't have to be like Michael, but Michael coming in and supporting the show with super stickers or stars on Facebook is definitely a big help. And as he says, Tom Brady has announced his retirement from the NFL. Brad D coming in saying, good morning. Your work is appreciated. And you are appreciated too, Brad. Certainly appreciate it. RC Plane Builder does say Tom Brady gone for good. And he said this time for good. Last week, Nick, we talked about possible landing spots for Tom Brady. We never said retirement.
No, we didn't.
We did not say retirement.
I figured after, burning his family to the ground, essentially. I mean, I'm not in there, so obviously speculation galore, but the divorce with Giselle and everything and how he wanted the reports of how much he wanted to come back to the game to retire 1 year later. I don't know. Seems pretty wild to me. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll have to be like 6 weeks through the regular season next year before I'm like, okay, no Tom Brady. I guess we have officially moved on. But I guess for now, we have to move forward like he is going to be out of it. And that's one less quality quarterback in the league for his age, which is pretty outstanding. But one less quality quarterback, one more seat to fill. Tampa Bay's in a rough spot. The Saints are in a pretty rough spot. Both of those seem like a teardown operation here. We'll see what happens. Maybe there's going to be a fire sale in Tampa Bay that's worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see, what Tampa Bay ends up doing. Do they think they're close? Can they fix that offensive line? There's a lot of that talk that goes around now. Can they find their quarterback? Want to say good morning to a friend of mine who's coming in, Rodney Salisbury. Rodney, I don't recognize the picture, though, but I only know one Rodney Salisbury. Coach Salisbury, high school football coach up in Memphis, friend of mine. It's been a while. Reach out. I don't know if you're down here in Mobile. That's where I am today and then tomorrow for practice. I've still got the same 404 phone number. I'm easy to find. Shoot me a note. Would love to catch up. Appreciate you coming in. And National Signing Day certainly is not what it was. That's for sure. It's National Signing Day is now in December, but I know that Coach Salisbury at one point had 15, 18 kids at a time coming out of Whitehaven. So good to see you, Coach. And appreciate you stopping in. Yeah, it's just as busy on signing day, just busy with it's just a little different these days. Yeah. It's just a little different these days. I saw an old contact of mine at Scout, and I was like, can you come down here the day before National Signing Day? He's like, it doesn't mean anything anymore. They're done. Yeah. I'm down here to interview some prospects and college coaches. I'm like, all right, there you go.
Yeah, most of that news is happening in like bowl prep season now. It's not only the signing day, but it's the transfer portal now.
Yeah.
Also, it's just absolute chaos. They really need to work on their seasons there. And I guess it's all, still rotates around semesters. So like there was an incident recently where a player, Walter Rouse, coming from Stanford, committed to Nebraska, never started classes at Nebraska yet. About 3 days later, I'm actually going to Oklahoma. Psych. So it's Wild West, man. It's really
It's swung too far. I mean, anybody that knows me knows I've called them the National Coalition Against Athletes since I wrote my freshman paper in college about how unfair the treatment was to college football players, considering the revenue. That was 1990, fall in 91. I've been on this bandwagon for 30 years. It's swung too far back the other direction. I'm telling you, the easy way to fix this, if you're going to pay them, multi-year contracts. The scholarship was always a 1-year deal, but it was always just a 1-year deal in favor of the universities. They could cut a guy and he had to sit out a year, which was crap. If you're going to cut him, let him go somewhere else. Now they can just go all the time. So it's everybody's on a 1-year deal. And that's tough to build a team like that. One of my good friends, Robert Prunty, he had the best recruiting class every year. He was at Hargrave Military Academy. He had to get 60 to 65 guys every single year. It was an unbelievable amount of work. Yeah. That's what these guys are having to do every year these days is not just recruit, but re-recruit the guys you've already got. Multi-year deals, you're paying them. I got no problem with that. Yep. On that note, Dominic Jaramillo coming in says, good morning, Scott, Nick and Dog Nation and Broncos country. And Dom says, do you believe Vic will come back to Denver as DC? And Nathan says, Vic signed with Miami. No, he didn't. Nathan, appreciate you coming in. He did not sign, and he's still up in the air looking at a couple of places, including Denver. I'll let you handle this one while I soothe my throat for a moment.
Yeah, no, there's been a deal in principle, but it has not been signed, has not been officially agreed to. So Vic Fangio is still a free agent out there on the market. Obviously, they're early in the process. Sound like the Panthers are very interested. Now it's Miami. Maybe he could go to San Francisco. Maybe he could go to Denver. He's going to end up somewhere. Who knows? Obviously, the dynamic with Denver would be interesting, but he hasn't signed with anybody just yet.
Yeah, so he's still out there. Dr. Van Nostren, one of our Broncos fans, says keep the good news going. We'll try. It's been a heck of a week so far. Keith Robbins coming in on Facebook says, good morning, guys. Good morning to you as well. And Nathan does say good morning. Jeremy, one of our favorites, says good morning, boys. And then let's see. Lawrence is also coming. He says, what's up, guys? Honestly, I don't want Vic Fangio back in the Broncos. How you made the locker room feel, I don't think is forgivable. There's two sides to every story on this. And, was he the right guy for the head coaching job? No, we'll see. It's different as a defensive coordinator. You're kind of the guy in the sky. It's not every day. You might coach a position still, but you're not the head coach. You're not making all the decisions. You got Sean Payton for that. You are there to put players, to scheme guys into the right position. He's been good at that. And I don't think that's as big a problem. Real quick, before we move on, as chat is picking up, we've got several people starting to roll in. Hit that like in Facebook and like on YouTube as you come in, as the numbers grow throughout the time. But Tom Brady, is there any question? I mean, can you say it hurts me to say it. I was a big Joe Montana guy, and I'm loyal to a fault. But as soon as he won the one with Tampa, it wasn't the 28-3 did it for me. That was more Atlanta than Tom Brady. That was Atlanta being Atlanta. Sorry, but yes, it was. Than Tom Brady. But as soon as he goes down and wins it with Tampa, I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me. He's the best that's ever laced him up.
Just for the longevity as well. He played multiple seasons longer than Peyton. I don't think he would. If you want to say Peyton Manning's the greatest of all time, you want to say
no. I had Montana, so I was a Joe Montana guy.
For me, if you want to make an argument for Peyton or Joe Montana, I'll hear you out because I think they're all in their own categories of elite. I'll probably say it's Tom Brady too, begrudgingly, because I've been a Peyton Manning guy for a while. I thought what was it? The 2 years Peyton Manning had a top 10 defense. He went to the Super Bowl. The 2 years in Indy, excuse me. So and Tom Brady had a top 10 defense like more years than he didn't in New England. But he's incredible. He's going to be the GOAT in my opinion. But All
And it
great
is a
teams.
team game. I mean, part
Yeah.
of the defense is you're able to get, 1-year veteran guys that want to come in and win a Super Bowl because they believe in Tom Brady.
Yeah.
That's part of it also. I was always a Joe Cool guy. I mean, I never had a feeling. It's like the ball, 6 minutes, 2 minutes left, down six, the game's over. Joe Montana's going to win this. I always kind of judge quarterbacks by who would I least want to see with the ball in his hands in a 2-minute drill. And for me, it was always Joe Montana. I think he won 3 and was MVP all 3 times. But it's tough. Tom Brady was pretty darn good, and I think he cemented his legacy. Actually, when he went to Tampa, for
Yeah.
me, LeBron was like that. Like the hardest thing LeBron has done, winning one in Cleveland. I don't care who who you bring to Cleveland with you. It's Cleveland, y'all. I was born in Akron, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland. I was raised in Atlanta. I know what miserable sports fans in cursed towns feel like. I know it. To be able to do that in Cleveland was big. To do that in Tampa was big. So I'm okay with him saying, but like I said, begrudgingly saying the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and like we talked about, what does this mean for Tampa? Is it going to be a fire sale there? Are they going to be trading the offensive line, young players, the likes of Vita Vea, Shaq Mason, Tristan Wirfs, guys that are still in their rookie contract that could get some picks back? Because that's a team with how their salary cap is set up that might need, in my opinion, the best strategy would be to accelerate your way off to the bottom to bounce off as hard as you can. And that would involve the trading away a lot of your assets coming up and, hitting that reset button. Not this soft rebuild. Soft rebuild is nothing if you don't have the ability to add young players around them or a quarterback coming in that you believe in. So I would, if I was in charge there, if I was ownership, I'd be like, okay, we had a great run with Tom Brady. It's time to hit the reset. The harder we hit on the reset, the quicker we'll be out of this.
And Jeremy Shawn says he's the most accomplished, not nearly the most talented. No, and neither was Joe Montana.
Or
Neither was
Payton.
Peyton Manning for that. When I think of the most physically gifted quarterbacks, the first one that pops to mind for me is John Elway. He could run like a deer. You forget how well he could run because he had that 100-mile-an-hour fastball of an arm. But when it comes to size, strength, all that type of things, even with the accuracy with that arm strength, John Elway was arguably the most gifted quarterback to ever play this game. And so, but a lot of times, you talk about the great coaching to go with it. Did Peyton Manning ever have that guy? Joe Montana certainly did. Bill Walsh was, in the upper echelon of all time. But usually those guys go together. Find Hall of Fame coach, you find Hall of Fame quarterback. That's for sure.
Yeah. Brady and Manning also the only 2 quarterbacks to win Super Bowls with 2 different teams. So will be, I don't have an argument with either of those guys. And Dr. Van Nostrand coming in saying Elway and Favre had crazy arm talent. They certainly
were
did.
benchmarks for me. Those are benchmark guys for me. I mean, I was reading stories. Favre, the guys had to wear reinforced gloves because he was splitting the webbing in their hands. He was throwing the ball so hard. Just different, just different type of thing. And those are kind of my benchmarks when I think of strongest arms. That's who I compare them to historically.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely incredible. I mean, in the recent, decade, you probably would have to say Cam Newton when he was at his peak and Josh Allen right now as far as the tools go. But it's quarterback, it's the tools and a head up position and a in your chest cavity. You got to have that work ethic, that heart as well. So it's a tough position.
I've told you before, in my 20 years of scouting high school players, the most talented thrower I ever saw was Jamarcus Russell. And it takes more than that. And then the day after that, I was thinking there might be some old folks in here. I know Coach Salisbury's still in here. He remembers Ryan Perrilloux. Very few others might not. He was a Louisiana kid that reminded me a lot of Brett Favre. Could throw it through a freaking wall. He was in the same class as Mark Sanchez and all that group. I think that was 04. And if he wasn't 1, he was 2 behind Sanchez, and just never came together for him. So it takes more than that. So. Let's hit on the Broncos real quick. I want to talk about them, and Roderick Cook says Joe is the best, Scott. So it was, again, I wouldn't argue with you. Joe was unbelievable. A lot of great players. Yes, and Coach Salisbury remembers Ryan Perrilloux. Ryan Perrilloux was something else. So want to talk about the Broncos real quick and Sean Payton. Fair deal. You think they got the right guy? And we talked about this last night, but it's a different crowd. It's a different show. Different morning. We've gotten to sleep on it a little bit. Do you think they got a fair deal? Was he the right guy for the Denver Broncos?
I still think in reality they would have loved to have Jim Harbaugh in here just because he would have cost less in terms of draft capital. And this is a team that could use some young cost controlled players to take on the impending bump in pay that will be Russell Wilson, whether that be him on the team or off the team.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to really dig yourself out of that hole will be draft picks that you're hitting on over the 2 seasons that would follow that. But this is a get it right and make a splash move. The Broncos ownership promised a big swing. Seemed like they were trying, but it might be falling through. But alas, yesterday it comes through. Broncos are trading pick 29 overall this season and what looks like a down year as far as the talent in the draft in that area. The second round pick next season for Sean Payton and the Saints third round pick next year. So the Broncos get in their head coach. I don't think there's been a deal agreed to yet in principle. I think he's heading out to Denver here today. They're going to start assembling that staff. That's what I'm really excited to see. I like to dig into the coordinators, the positional coaches as well. But I think overall it was a fair deal and a deal that the Broncos ownership maybe didn't have to make, but could make. And I think that's something that's talks to the NFL as well. I mean, this is a team that they're rich. Sometimes if you're rich, though, you don't want to spend that money. They're okay spending that money. Sean Payton's going to have a crazy contract. His staff is going to have crazy contracts. Anything he could possibly want could be at his disposal as well within structure of the salary cap parameters. And I think that's we talked about it when the position opened. Obviously, Russell Wilson is a concern with how he played last year in his contract. You're in the AFC West with Mahomes and Herbert. That's makes it tougher, no doubt about that. But anything you could possibly want, coaching staff, technology, training, et cetera, you can have. And money is no object for the ownership group.
Yeah, and you should be able to help massage the salary cap a little bit with bonuses for your young players. Let's say Pat Surtain comes up as a number 9 pick. His fifth-year option would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $16 million, 15 or 16. You can go ahead and extend him and get his cap number down to 5. And pick up $11 million in his 5th-year option, that type of thing, because you've got the money, the resources to pay out those early bonuses. Sean Payton was my pick for the Broncos all along. I watched, again, growing up an Atlanta Falcons fan, I loved the Saints-Falcons rivalry. It didn't get enough credit for how good a rivalry it was because both teams were pretty bad when I was a kid growing up. Being able to take the New Orleans Saints to relevancy and being a contender year in and year out with maybe an off year here or there. The NFC South was really good when Payton was there. It was a remarkable accomplishment. I mean, again, take a look at if I always want to call him Caldwell. What's the name of the coach in Detroit
right now?
Yes.
Campbell. Dan Campbell.
Thank you. If Dan Campbell takes Detroit to the playoffs 10 out of 15 years and wins a Super Bowl, they're going to put a statue up for him. That's where the New Orleans Saints were. So I think he's the right guy. And for the long haul, if this ends up being a 2 or 3 year deal, no, it wasn't worth it. You're not hiring him to be a 2 or 3 year deal. You're hiring him for 10. I can burn a couple draft picks for a 10-year deal, for God's sakes. You burn half your draft picks every year anyway on guys that can't play. There's just not enough great players in the league. And I can get veteran minimums. They're going to be better than my 5th, 6th, and 7th round draft picks 99% of the time. So I'm not too worried about being able to build a team. Getting the right guy was much, much more important. And I think it was a good deal for the Saints.
And one thing I do want to add to this for the Broncos perspective is that while they did give up their 2nd round pick next season, they are getting back a Saints 3rd. Those picks, in theory, could be pretty close together. Obviously, it could go to bleep this season like it did this past year for the Broncos, but I don't think that's a very good Saints team next year. And this is a Broncos team that with Sean Payton, I think a little better injury luck, knock on wood. God, you say that every year, it seems like, that you expect the Broncos to be knocking on the door to playoffs. I don't have them AFC West winners by any means, given what they look like this season, but 10 wins, I think, is definitely within the realm of possibility. Adding Sean Payton here with how close the Broncos were in a lot of games, getting Russell Wilson in a system that maximizes his skill set, buy-in from Russell Wilson as well. So I think that, the reset that you have next season in terms of the draft capital makes it even more palatable. I was always very concerned about giving up that 2024 first, because let's say next season does go to hell in a handbasket. You can't be giving up the number 3 overall pick next year where it could be May or Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. stinks this year, it's 5. At least it's not like 3. But that's I'm really happy they held on to that first round pick next year.
Schefter said it was the Saints' choice.
Mm-hmm.
I would have taken the 2024 deal. I would have taken the 2024 first round pick and a lower pick, just knowing what the draft could be and knowing where the Broncos were. I mean, talk about turning the Broncos around. What would you consider a turnaround? What would you say? Okay, this was headed in the right direction. What are your kind of your expectations going into next season?
They don't have to make the playoffs, but I think you need to be 10 wins.
Yeah, I was thinking 9. Someone said, I only expect 9 wins. It'll take a while to turn this around. I'm like, guys, 9 is a turnaround.
Yeah.
9 is a turnaround. When you only win 5, you're knocking on the door of the playoffs at 9. That's moving the needle in the right direction. So it could take some time. Lots of Broncos questions coming in here. So we'll hit on that before we get on a Senior Bowl real quick. So let me see here real quick. Jason says, with limited draft picks and the acquisition of Sean Payton, will the Broncos build through free agency? Who could you see coming to Denver through free agency? Well, I know edge is going to be a priority in the draft if you can find one, even if it's a developmental project. Marcus Davenport's a guy that you might target 12 million, 13 million range, real steady. You can afford that. He's battled injury a little bit. I wouldn't say maybe he hasn't quite lived up to his first round billing, but is a really good player at a medium cost. He's not bottom of the barrel. He's not 20 million. He's medium and a good pro. That could be a guy. And again, I want to reiterate, I think this was a very good deal for the New Orleans Saints. I'm surprised we haven't heard about any cash changing hands. That's the one I was expecting too, though.
Yeah, that is surprising. I guess the Loomises aren't hurting for cash, though. But yeah, the Broncos are going to have to build through free agency. I'm still waiting to see what the scheme is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. If they're switching to a 4-3, they're going to need different type of edge rushers than they currently have on the roster, because right now they mainly roster the, stand-up, more finesse speed edges from the wide 9 technique. So that's one that you'll have to watch out for. Defensive tackle as well. I mean, we're going to talk offensive line, but I think the defensive trenches as well, as Michael points out here, we don't know what's going to happen with Draymond Jones yet. Is he going to be tagged? Is he going to stay in Denver on the tag, which would be about, I think, $18 million a year?
Might be a little higher than that. I mean, I've seen people say 19.3, but let's see what the new contracts. Well, I don't know when the date is set. When is the date set for average of 5? March 15th.
It's come out. No, the
numbers
has
are already out. Okay, so it's official. It was like 19.3 then, is what I saw.
The question is he a defensive tackle or a defensive end? Yeah. Because I would categorize him as a defensive tackle because he's an interior defensive line, but he plays 3-4 and they listed a defensive. No, he's not an edge rusher. He's a defensive.
It's not too much difference because Aaron Donald skews that at $33 million. He skews it up to where it averages about the same.
I think it was like 18.3 to 19.8 or something. Okay. So it's in between.
That's a difference.
Yeah. So I would categorize him as an interior defensive line. I'm not sure and the Broncos obviously will try to as well if they want to put the tag on him. But we'll be interested to see what happens. He was a top 10 interior pass rusher in my book in the NFL, and was really good. He's not an alpha out there. There's not many interior defensive linemen that are true alphas, probably 5 in the NFL. But still a really good player, versatile player. They lined him up on edge last season a bit too, and got some pressures out there. So he's a phenomenal prospect, and we'll see what happens with him. If he's gone though, defensive tackle is a big question mark for the Broncos.
If I tag him, I'm trading him. If I can't come to an agreement with him, I'm going to tag you, and then we'll work out a trade. Because if he doesn't want to be there, that's fine, but I'm not letting you go for nothing. I don't want to pay him 19. I think it's a little too rich for him. He's a 13, 14 million guy to me, but he was also top 15 on ESPN's list of free agents right now. So we'll see what the market holds for him. I don't think Draymond necessarily wants out. I think Draymond's just kind of a colorful character. He's, he says what's on his mind. You show him the love and he will stay. And as Keith says, the Falcons are going to get Marcus Davenport. They'll be in it too, and they got more money for sure. You got Payton over in Denver. You got Ryan Nielsen, defensive coordinator hire, who coached defensive line, and they loved him on the defensive line. Ask Cam Jordan.
I think that's going to be
that. I think Marcus Davenport is a good shout. In fact, I think I've shouted that before for the Atlanta Falcons, but someone to watch too. Keep an eye on Von Bell, maybe. Again, a lot of the Falcons need defense everywhere. So I got to look at those guys that were possibilities when they got Ryan Nielsen. now a lot of that seems to make sense with the Denver Broncos too. Roderick Cook comes in. He says, I want to know more about that big friendly giant you posted yesterday, Scott. He's enormous. All right, that's a good segue. We're at 25 minutes here, Nick. DeWan Jones, and I spelled his name incorrectly the first time yesterday. It is DeWan Jones. I watched him yesterday just dominate the Senior Bowl, and he's 6'8" and change, so 6'8 1/4, I think, or an eighth, 375 pounds, and he had a 7'5.5" wingspan with hands like a bunch of bananas. I mean, just huge hands. I think they were probably 11, maybe. I could look it up real quick. Let me see. National DeWan Jones, number 79, 6'8 1/8, 375, almost 37-inch arms, 11.5-inch hands with a wingspan of 89.5 inches. That's huge. Can he move? Yes, he can. Yes, he can. I said that it looked like he was just coming out of basketball season, Nick. And it doesn't surprise me. Someone else commented, yeah, he was a basketball player. I'm like, I'm not surprised. Not surprised a bit. And real quick, we'll come back to DeWan because I want to make sure we say hello to Gary Palmer, Broncos fan on YouTube, coming in with a super chat. Thank you, Gary. Says, good morning, Scott and Nick. I'm just giddy about the Sean deal. This time we got it right. My son's name is Sean, so I'm usually giddy when Sean, he can make me really happy or really mad. You know how the teenagers work. So, but yeah, I think it was a very, very well. Gary, you watch us enough. You know who I thought was the guy for the Denver Broncos. So now I'm hoping he makes me look smart. I root for me. So I want Sean Payton to be very successful with the Denver Broncos. But DeWan Jones, what did you know coming in, Nick? What were you hearing about the possibilities of DeWan Jones, Ohio State right tackle?
He's obviously at the Senior Bowl, but a young player still for the Senior Bowl standards. I think he hasn't even yet turned 22 years old. Basketball player. There's some pretty fun highlights of him in basketball, dunking and moving around, pretty nimble for his size. He's not, an absolutely incredible athlete where we'd be talking about him, last year. Evan Neal was 6'8". He doesn't move like Evan. Wasn't Evan Neal that
Evan
big?
Wasn't quite that big.
Okay, I remember him being pretty large.
I think he may have been right at 6'6". And maybe 325, 330, and chiseled. I mean, he looked like a linebacker. If you didn't have any reference, Evan Neal was chiseled. This isn't that guy. He's a little heavier, and he's like heavier looking, 375 pounds.
Yeah, so Evan Neal, 6'7", 350.
Was he that big? Okay, that's within shouting distance for me. And how heavy was he?
350.
Okay. Whew.
So I don't think we're talking about that caliber of movement to size ratio, but he even has a bigger length out there. DeWan Jones was 84.5 arm length measured. They're not arm length. God, that would be unbelievable. Wingspan out there at the Senior Bowl. I think it's 99th percentile for that wingspan out there. Arm length is a little bit, I think, a better measurement just because it's this distance. It's not this distance for the offensive lineman blocking, but I digress. It's still, he's a broad man. That helps on the arc.
I like it either way because I just think from your center, where you lined up from your sternum, how far are you reaching out?
Yeah.
One way or another.
I've just seen some where broad-chested, short arms. Like, okay, look how long his wingspan is. Well, he's going to be a center.
It does make a difference when you're going forward. I always thought of it as like push as a tackle, pushing a guy around the end. But when you're getting your arms out and controlling somebody in front of you, the arm length does matter. If I can keep you from getting a hold of me because I've got you at reach, that does make a difference. Okay, I'm good with that one.
So I think he is probably best in long term in more of a gap centric scheme where he can get on a guy quickly and displace them. However, I think that there is still enough movement skill and fluidity that he can work combo blocks and be an outside zone stretch guy. I would imagine he's right now, if he continues a good performance here for the Senior Bowl, ends up especially in this draft class, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he sneaks into the back end of the first round or 30 to 50. I think right now, I liked him coming in. I wanted to see the fluidity. I wanted to see the bend. It's something like, oh man, he's 6'8". That's amazing. He's so massive. Being 6'8", naturally, your leverage is going to be an issue. You have to be able to play with a little bit of knee bend when you are engaging with these players. It's one of my big questions about Blake Freeland, who's also, I think, 6'8" down there at the Senior Bowl from BYU. Massive. I don't know if he can get under guys. He's just a little bit stiff there. But DeWan showed enough flexibility, the ability to get under there, and the power. So really fun prospect. Going to be a good right tackle again. I still think probably better in a gap-oriented scheme, but teams are so versatile today. He's not such an oaf out there, a lumberer, that you can't do outside zone stuff with him or pin pull kind of stuff.
He had a really good drop step. You worry about his quickness getting back to the right tackle if he's out there by himself. A good drop step, and then his length, his reach was so crazy, and he's so strong that he's just shoving guys around the corner. And if he got his hands on players, it's like I saw guys that had good days at edge, unless they were going up against DeWand, and he just swallowed everybody. And he seemed like, someone mentioned in the comments that I put on the post I put on my YouTube channel, someone said something about Andre the Giant. And as I'm watching him, he had a good rep, and like it was very friendly afterwards. It was like a tap on the head, and the other guy kind of gave him a fist bump, like good rep. And it was just like, it reminded me of the battle scene, the fight scene with Andre the Giant and Princess Price. I just want you to feel like you're doing well. Are you just toying with me? So
I don't know if I love that. I kind of want a little bit of a jerk out there, because offensive line's a mentality that's digging in too far. Can you play? Can you not play? But
I know it's too much. But again, if you're really good, I mean, the greatest cover man ever in Deion Jones used to give pointers to the wide receivers, like, "Hey, I can tell which way you're going based on the way you're lining up." I mean, he had all kinds of cockiness in him too, obviously, but he was so confident in his ability that he was friendly as he was, locking guys down. So, but yeah, DeWand Jones, highest riser for me of this bunch that we saw yesterday. And I haven't gone through all of my video yet. So my time at the Senior Bowl is I shoot video, and y'all saw it. I had like 75 highlight videos last year. So in that case, I'm watching it through a sun-drenched screen finder that's about this big, viewfinder that's this big. So I don't see it right away. It takes me some time to go back through the clips. I went through all my one-on-ones from the national team, and I've been through about halfway through the American team of the one-on-ones. And there's some guys that jump out for sure. Another guy, let's hit the chat here real quick. Brad D saying, not a stretch zone guy. Can he get up to the second level? Yes, he can. Can he drop in pass protection? Yes, he can. Can he drop 20 pounds and be a more mature 360 pounds? Yes, he can. Yes, he can. He can. There's some work to be done on that. Someone else said, one of the comments was, it concerns me that he didn't have a great career at Ohio State. And he's 6'8", 375 pounds. He's like a baby Great Dane out there growing up, just trying to figure out where everything is. And by God, when he grows up and he's fully mature, 27, 28 years old, he's going to be majestic. You hope, that's the hope. But it takes a little bit more time for some of these big guys to mature a little bit.
Also, who's to say he didn't figure it out at Ohio State? His tape's pretty good. There was a team that was looking to throw the ball around the yard. They weren't a under center power team by any means, and they had one of the best offensive lines in college football this season. You had Paris Johnson on the other side, Luke Weipler in the middle. I mean, that was a damn good offensive line across the board. So he did have wasn't the best game against Michigan this past season, but most of the tape is pretty darn good. So I don't know about why didn't he come reach his ceiling at Ohio State? I think it was fine.
Yeah, he didn't reach the ceiling though. I mean, people are already saying, okay, he's already better than he was. And like I said, as soon as the season's over, y'all have heard me say this before, these guys they go to football graduate school all the way through the combine. They're there working with their personal trainers and personal coaches 4 hours a day from the minute their season ends until the draft, or at least until their end of their pro days. And then they kind of relax a little bit. Chris Walker coming on Facebook. Good morning, Chris. He says, okay, Scott, I know you're planning on being at the Senior Bowl. I am at the Senior Bowl, where the top prospects are going to be. But aren't the Falcon staff coaching in the East-West Shrine game? Do you think that they find later round prospects that they fall in love with there? They'll be at both, and some of the staff is there. I think actually the special teams coach, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I think he's the head coach of one of the teams. So I think he's the one that's handling it. Do I think they will probably get a guy from the Shrine Bowl this year? I do. and they've gotten a lot of guys from the Senior Bowl the last couple of years, which bothers me that they haven't gotten some of the really available best guys like Abraham Lucas. And you were talking about tall guys in Bend. Abraham Lucas was 6'8", 330. I'm sorry, not Abraham Lucas. Spencer Brown was 2 years ago. 6'8" and an eighth, 330 pounds. And you wonder about, does he have the bend? And he was so flexible. When he was at right tackle on the opposite side, going right to left from me, and he would actually get down in his crouch so low, he'd disappear behind the guard. The guy's 6'8". I'm like, yeah, he's got flexibility. He's got a 500-pound bench press, and he's moving around like he's on a trampoline out there. I like that guy. And he turned into not quite an immediate starter, but by midseason, he's been a starter for the Buffalo Bills at right tackle ever since. Lasted till about 100. That's a guy that should have gone 25 to 30. So, can DeJuan Jones become that guy this year? Not exactly small school and under the radar, Nick, but high riser for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all. There's some good tackles out there this year in the Senior Bowl. It's more of a senior group this year, not a lot of underclassmen declaring and making the move there besides the top three. But you also have Matthew Bergeron, Syracuse out there, a name to keep an eye on, and Darnell Wright, who measured with good arm length, but incredibly small hands for his size. I thought it was pretty interesting. He has smaller hands than I do, which I'm 6'1". So I don't know about that, but anybody else in the offensive line stand out to you? Before we started the show, you mentioned somebody to me that surprised me a bit based on what you talked about.
Darnell Wright with 8, that can't be right. 8.5-inch hands, I'm not buying it. No, I'm not buying it. That's
everything reported there.
That's got to be a misprint.
There was a lot of buzz on Twitter after that came out, so nobody corrected him.
Wow, that's crazy. He's Darnell Wright, 6'5", 340 pounds. My 13-year-old has 11-inch hands.
Yeah.
He waved at me like when he was 11 years old. I know his feet were getting big. You see that. I already mentioned his name, Sean, but I was like, hey, buddy. And he kind of goes, I was like, wait a minute.
The wind.
I was like, wait a minute. Come here. And I put my hand up against his, and I can palm a basketball. Mine are like just under 10. And his hand was bigger than mine. I'm like, good Lord, kid. I'm like, why won't you throw a curveball again? Please. Why won't you pitch? I don't like pitching. All right. So, yeah, there was a player out there. I told you I can't see. Well, one, I can't see great anyway. So, I got my glasses on. I got my scripts on. I had to wear these in the Target to find an umbrella because I couldn't read any of the signs. Yeah, I'm getting old. So I'm wearing my sunglasses inside because they're prescriptions. So I'm looking out there and I see this orange helmet and I thought it was a Syracuse guy. And I'm like, man, he's really light on his feet, really fluid. I like this guy. Who is that? Yeah, it was Osiris Torrance, Florida Gators. It was the other orange. I felt like I saw a block for a Syracuse instead of the Gators script. Someone to watch. I know he's been someone that was mocked early to the Denver Broncos as a guard and as a first-round guy, and I could see why. They did more 1v1 team-on-team stuff yesterday on day one than they've ever done before. So normally I'm watching quarterbacks and skill guys on the first day. No. When the big boys start popping pads, that's where the crowd goes and that's where the camera goes. So I've got a ton of that from the first day on video that I've gotten to watch most of, but I haven't been able to log it. Y'all know I will. It'll get out there.
And that's pretty interesting to me about Cyrus Torrance, because watching him at Florida, I thought he was fine in his smoothness and short spaces, but I didn't think of him being overly explosive. The speed to power on this, very, very powerful guy, but more from a mass overwhelming stature versus, exploding out of his stance and the fluidity in space as well. So interesting to see that. Obviously, Cyrus Torrance followed Billy Napier from Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, over to Florida this year to play right guard. He's a massive man, and I think weight's going to be a concern with him at the next level. He's going to have to be disciplined on that throughout his career, from my understanding of how he puts on weight. But somebody who probably is the only true interior offensive lineman I would assume goes in the first round. I don't love using a first-round pick on interior offensive line unless they're, like a David DeCastro level of player, which is he felt like 22nd overall, and that just kind of shows the positional value, in my opinion, of that, how good you have to be there. But if somebody, looking for a plug-and-play power right guard that's going to offer you a building block piece for years to come, specifically, again, in more of a power scheme, in my opinion, I would get it. I have a very big bias against, interior offensive linemen and linebackers round one, and tight ends. But I would understand it, and interesting to hear how smooth he looked to you from a distance with no preconceived notions on watching
Yeah,
him
I
play.
didn't even know that was him. I
Yeah.
was like, wow. And you're just watching the guys warm up, and just the little bounce. You
Mhm.
can just see it's different. It's hard to explain to people, but sometimes guys just move different.
If you've
And
watched enough of them, you know what you're looking for based
and
on
I
the
have.
yeah.
They just move different. They've got a little bit more bend in their ankles. They get a little more bounce in their step when they're warming up. When they're doing high knees, it comes up to their chins instead of to their waist. They get down in their stances and they just crouch down into little frogger poses. You see all these things. I was like, okay. And then he was winning a lot of his reps. And Nick, I think we're going to have a lot of fun with the offensive line down
Good.
here. To be honest with you, my first impressions, my gut reaction watching through these without logging all the names just yet was the offensive line was beating the defensive line fairly handily in the 1v1s over and over and over again. One of the names that jumped out at me was number 71 on the national team, Maryland, Jalen Duncan.
Mhm.
6'5.5", 298 pounds, 33.5-inch arms with an 80 and change wingspan. I don't know what you knew about him coming in, but I think he's opening some eyes down here. His lateral movement at tackle, he's at left tackle, where Jones was at right tackle. That tells you something about the athleticism right there. He's really good. He's been really good over there this week.
Yeah, Jalen Duncan played at Maryland for a number of years. Saw him projected in some, way too early mock drafts in the back end of the first round, given his predictive
Mhm.
athleticism or his known athleticism. He's always been a bit erratic with his technique, specifically his hand placement. I think he's very poor in his ability to consistently strike against offensive linemen, and then also can continue his blocks, his ability to sustain his grip. When people hear grip, what do you mean? Is he holding? No, but it's like you want guys with like sticky hands. They touch them and then they just hold on to them. They jolt them good enough and the hands don't get displaced off of them. You don't see them sliding off.
Well,
Those
and
are,
you're allowed to hold within the pad
yeah,
framework of the pads too.
the
So
grip. Yeah.
you're allowed to
Yeah.
hold them.
But
It's just when
some,
they turn when they get in trouble is when the quarterback breaks the pocket.
and then
You've got a hold of them and they try and change directions, and
yeah.
you can't because you got a hold of their jerseys. That's when the quarterback can get you into some trouble.
Yeah, but Jalen Duncan, I thought he was a little bit erratic in his technique at Maryland. His again grip strength, his hands tended to slide off guys a good bit out there.
Mhm.
But he's an athletic tester. What'd you say the arm length was? 33 and
33 and
7/8.
change. Let me see real quick. I think I went off of him real quick. 71 national was 33 and a half. So
33 and a half.
right
So
on the edge, right on
right
the
on the
edge,
edge.
maybe a
Yeah.
shade light at 6.5, 298, but I'll take too light over too heavy any day. It's easier to put weight on guys. We talk about DeJuan Jones. It's easier to get Jalen Duncan from 295 to 315 than
Mhm.
it is to get 20 pounds off of a DeJuan Jones. It's
Mhm.
just hard. It's
Mhm.
harder.
So yeah, but Jalen Duncan, right now, I'd probably expect him to be a day 2 pick at the offensive tackle position, more of a left tackle. You mentioned the weight. I think outside zone is his happy place. I'm be curious, keep an eye on him. So I'm obsessed with versatility in the offensive line. I want to see a guy play left tackle and right tackle. I know he played mostly left tackle at Maryland, but if I'm looking to draft somebody, I want to make sure that, especially not a slam dunk blue chipper round one, I want to make sure you can play left tackle and right tackle, or left tackle in one of the guard spots. So be curious to see how he looks when he does flip positions, whenever that comes. But good to hear he was looking good. He's came into the year as one of the more, watch for this guy because he does have the tools
Mhm.
to get it done. And to hear that he's standing out there justifies that preseason conversation.
Yeah, his lateral movement was good, and his strength at the point of attack using his hands was also really good. You mentioned left versus right. There was a guy I thought that looked like, at times, almost two different guys out there. Ryan Hayes of Michigan.
Hmm.
He struggled a little bit. He was hot and cold. So 6'6.5", 305. He was a little hot and cold. One of the guys on the interior, this will come at no surprise for you, was Cody Mock,
Hmm.
North Dakota State University. He measured. Let me see what he measured here real quick. I've got this at almost 6'5", so 6'4", 7/8", 305. he doesn't play, and I mean this in a good way, because he was on the interior. He doesn't play that tall because his flexibility was so good. He was getting so low, and he plays heavier than that. So I had, if you asked me what he was, I would have said 6'3", 330, just from the eye test at guard, and he's almost 6'5" and only 305. And he you want to talk about hands? His hands are fantastic. His hands were so fast as the defensive linemen are coming in and trying to get people out, get their hands off of you. His hands were super quick, and he was very, very strong at the point of attack. I think somebody definitely worth keeping an eye on. I know Jim Nagy, the director of the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl here, I know he says that he should be a first-round guy. I don't know if that's the case yet, too soon, but he's definitely someone I would be real interested in. That's for sure.
Yeah, he played, I think, exclusively left tackle at North Dakota State there, the Bison.
He's working at right guard here.
He's working at right guard. Have you seen any center snaps from him?
I don't think he has. I've seen Michigan had a kid here. Temple had a guy here. Alabama has a guy here playing center, and they've all at times looked really good. The Alabama guy, let me see his name. It was almost a Polynesian name. Emil Ekiyor, junior, Alabama, 6'2" and a quarter, 320 pounds. He's sitting on his heels. When he's so flexible, he's sitting in his heels, and he is wide, and he is exactly what you're looking for in a center. He looks good too. Again, you all have heard me say before a zillion times, especially Broncos fans here, we were so weak up the middle. We can find you guys in the third round that are going to make you better instantly at guard and center. And I'll find several of them here that'll go third round or later that would make your team better. And part of that's because the bar has been set so low. You know, it's not just, oh yeah, so you're pretty arrogant about this. No, it's because you've got such bad play at the interior line that it's not going to be hard to upgrade. And you can upgrade.
Yeah, 100%. So you mentioned Jalen Duncan. You mentioned Ryan Hayes. What were you going to say about Ryan Hayes? You said he looked like a completely different guy, and then we tailed off.
Well, and then I remembered I just posted this as a YouTube short and on TikTok of Isaiah Foskey just blowing by him at right tackle.
Yeah.
So I thought he did better when he was on the right than when he was on the left. So I think he's got right tackle in his future.
He looks like a guard to me. Watching him, I always pegged him as a guard at the next level.
Maybe.
So
who's at 55? His teammate at center has done pretty well.
Olu Atolawani.
There's I don't know what that name is. It looks like it's partial Norwegian and part Japanese. Alu-san, he's got to have a nickname. Oluwatimi. 6'2" and a quarter, 308. 8 5/8 inch hands with an 80-inch wingspan. He's looked pretty solid on the interior. He's been playing center.
Yeah, he's one that sticks out for me. That was good there at Michigan this year. I don't think he's does anything from the athletic standpoint that would have him be in the top 100 picks. But round 4, round 5, he's going to get drafted and have a chance. He's pretty small, so I worry about you're talking about a day 3 offensive lineman who is a pure center. That always kind of concerns me if you're taking a guy that late. I want to at least have some versatility there across the offensive line, and with how his size, he's probably just a pure center. But if he, the center is probably one of the 4 positions on the field where intelligence and processing matter as much, if not more, than the athletic ability. It's the spine of the field. Center, quarterback, linebacker, safety. Like those are the positions where if you have enough athleticism, then it's about what you're seeing, what you're processing, what you're reacting to. So
you got to be able to hold up at the point of attack. That's a big one.
Yep.
And you'd like to have enough agility to get out to the second level. But a lot of it, like you're saying, is making those calls correctly and being able to adjust to all of the different pressures and the simulated pressures that you're going to be seeing coming in, the fake blitzes, the disguised coverages, the disguised blitzes that you are going to see. Michael Ranquillo asked, Scott, how did Matthew Bergeron look at the Senior Bowl? So far, just day 1, he was lining up at left tackle as well. I went through all of those one-on-ones. Let me see how many wins I had for him. I think he was number 60. I don't have any wins, but I don't have any losses. So maybe I had the wrong number. But I remember seeing him because I was like, oh, there's 2 Syracuse guys here. Duh. That was their helmets looked almost identical to me from a distance. And the other one, Osiris Torrance, caught my eye a little bit more, but he did okay. Let me double check his number. It does say number 60. So I don't have him as I haven't logged that one yet. That's why I haven't gone through all the logs yet for that one. But he did solid. I'll be able to put together a decent highlight package of him, get a better look at him for sure. Someone else asks, day 2 corners. Kevin comes in. Are you seeing any day 2 corners? Probably not yet, though. Normally, it's so much walkthrough stuff and technique teaching on day 1. I just watch the guys throwing because at least they'll do some one-on-ones. Yesterday, there were 2 sessions in both practices of one-on-one on the offensive defensive lines. And being what we have here with quarterbacks and wide receivers, and the one-on-ones are more fun anyway, I really focused on the OL and DL. And hopefully I'll get more of a look at the one-on-ones for the defensive backs, wide receivers today.
I heard that Julius Brents made some noise out there, looking pretty darn good. He had a few offensive pass interferences used against him by those receivers out there. He's got crazy length. I think he's a little bit top heavy. He's not going to be the most fluid change of direction guy, flipping his hips, but with the length he has, the physicality that he plays with, the athleticism he has overall, I'm expecting him to go day 2. And if you are a cover 3 heavy scheme or, looking for him to play more zone versus true off man coverage where he can play zone, but also still, use that length at the line of scrimmage, he's one to keep an eye on. Kansas State, he transferred from Iowa. Shout out to him. I was really bummed when he transferred from Iowa because the talent was obvious and immense, even as a true freshman. And if you want to go back and watch any of his tape this last year, he had an absolute battle in the Big 12 championship game where he went up against Quentin Johnson out there for TCU. It was a very fun game. Quentin Johnson got him a couple times, but he also had a few amazing plays on the ball. I think 2 interceptions as well. He's a fun one.
Yeah, and on the receiver position, hadn't been a lot stand out to me so far, given I haven't been focusing on those. One guy I did take, I normally like to come down here kind of blind and let them stand out, but there was one guy I was looking at, Andre Yosevas, Princeton wide receiver, 6'3", 212, Olympic caliber decathlete out of Princeton. The early word on him was he's obviously Olympic caliber decathlete, this athlete, and then some. But I wanted to see him catch the ball, and he was pretty fluid catching the ball. So watching some balls coming behind him, coming over him, stretching, good flexibility, decent catch radius. So far, positive reviews on Princeton there. So
yeah, we'll get into more of those guys as well. I said there was a question here from 88 Dr. Pepper saying guys over at PFF were raving about Tank Dell and his crazy ability to start and stop on a dime. Houston wide receiver Nathaniel Dell, Tank Dell, very small. Haven't watched him yet. I know that he stood out when I watched Clayton Tune out there at Houston this last year, but exceedingly small as well. But if you're looking for, a more, I want to say gadget, but, niche player given his size, definitely can be an interesting slot player out there if you're not leaning into the big slot.
And they better have a guy like that returning punts. So we'll check them out on that one again. Triple Eight. I haven't really focused on those guys. My early impressions were it's really the South. They call it the American. That's the SEC guys and the Southern for the most part. I think they're farther ahead at quarterback. I liked what I saw from their guys throwing the ball versus the other team. So that is. Who do we have over there? We've got Clayton Tune from Houston.
Just mentioned.
And we've got Hendon Hooker's not there. That's the one I was hoping to see.
Tyson Bagent from
Max
Shepherd.
Dugan and Bagent is the one I was talking. Bagent didn't look as big as some of the others. Let me confirm that. What number was he? Tyson Bagent was number 7. It's 6'2" and change, 213. Dugan just measured just over 6 feet tall. So the other quarterback must have been Clayton was 6'2". So none of those guys are very big. But I thought they threw the ball a little better, a little more consistently than the guys on the other team. So that'll help. That'll help.
Nathan Floyd asking about any information on the Kenny McIntosh injury, running back from Georgia. I haven't heard anything about that. Hopefully he's okay. It is just an exhibition, so if he is dinged, sit out, kid. Get ready for the senior or get ready for the combine. But would be a bummer if he is injured. Have not heard anything. Sean Payton took my soul yesterday. I have no idea what's going on in the world.
And the one of the standouts on the defense, maybe the standout on the defensive line, Kendall Benton, he left about 3/4 of the way through practice as well. So he went to the tunnel, and he was a handful. That's on the interior line, defensive tackle. He strikes me as a true 4-3 defensive tackle, Nick. Let me see what he weighed in at. He weighed at 312, so 6'3.5", 312, almost 34-inch arms, 10-inch hands, but very disruptive, very strong, very quick, very agile. Someone that can help your team a lot.
Yeah, I really like him. I'm really happy he's gone from Wisconsin because every time Iowa played him the last 2 seasons, he was just destroying their interior offensive line. They couldn't do anything. I think plays with good enough leverage and does not get displaced where if you wanted to two gap him from time to time, you could easily do that. I think he's got enough explosiveness and ability to shed and get low that he can play one gap from time to time. But I think he's classic for a more of a Vic Fangio gap and a half with that length. He can engage, win leverage, peek around, see where that guy's going. I'm playing this gap. Oh, but you're going that way. Shed him and go to that side. So the gap in that half technique. Yeah, Keanu Benton, interior defensive lineman from Wisconsin. One to keep an eye on there. I do want to ask a few more. Scott, I know that you haven't gotten to everybody yet, but I'm a trench guy, and I want to hear what some of these guys on the defensive side on the American team did. I'll run through some names here. Just want to see if anybody stands out to you. You can stop me when somebody does stand out to you.
I've watched the Nationals so far twice. I've only gone through half of the American. I'm better on the national side of things.
Let's go Nationals then.
Okay.
Just a little bit easier for you then. So you mentioned Isaiah Foskey. He's been Mel Kiper mocked him to the Broncos when they had their first round pick, end of the first. Now, personally, I know he had a lot of production out there. He's kind of built a little weird to me, 6'5", I think 265. I don't know what his official measurements are. That just 6'5".
Yeah, he was 6'4" and 7/8", 262, 34-inch arms, 10-inch hands. So good size. Good,
a little bit high cut.
Good quickness.
Yeah.
It's a little tough because I saw him go against DeJuan Jones and he got eaten alive. He just didn't know where to go. I'm like, I can't hit him in the chest and slide off of him because I just get enveloped. I can't go around him because he's so big. But then he had success against a lot of the other guys. So good first step. Again, he plays, and I meant this as a compliment when I said that on the interior line that Mock played shorter than 6'5". He was very flexible. He didn't play. He looked like an outside linebacker to me, not an edge, not a 6'5", 260-pound edge. I'm like, okay, maybe he's a little undersized. He ain't undersized at all. He's got great size. So I think there's something there. I think he seems like a guy to me that could test really well. I'm going to go ahead and jump to a next guy for you that you had asked about before was Keon White.
Yes, I want to hear about that one.
6'5", 280 pounds. I cannot believe he was 280 pounds.
The way he moves?
Yeah. He right now, I would say that this is an exaggeration. So Keon, take this as if you hear this is constructive criticism. He doesn't know what he's doing out there.
No.
Everything he was doing was trying to go round. He was trying to use speed rush, and he's 280 pounds, and he's trying to speed rush everybody because it's probably worked for a lot in his career. So I ended up marking down when you see his videos, I have 3 columns when I mark these so I can put highlights together: win, loss, draw. A lot of his were in the draw column because I can't give it a loss to the offensive tackle who is just sliding out and helping steering him around the edge. But I still want to show the explosiveness around the corner that this guy has. So lots of tools, but right now he's kind of a one-trick pony. He wants to go around. He wants to go outside every single time. And at 280 pounds, he'll need to learn the craft.
Year one for me, obviously a work in progress. I want to see what a creative defensive mind could use with him in twist and stunts, because if you play him at edge and he's looping on the inside and give him a singular gap where a center has to come across, like he's drawn to the left, and all of a sudden you have Keon White coming the other way, would be really interesting with him. But you're right. Another guy that this is a deep edge class this season. Mel Kiper had him going in the back end of the first round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of tools and traits. Not so sure about the process for him yet. The hands, the leverage, the ability to string together moves, but somebody who I wouldn't be shocked at all if he destroys it in Indianapolis at the combine and ends up going from pick 20 to 40 because there's no position where the athletic traits transfer as much as the edge rusher spot.
40 to 20. We want him coming up.
Yeah. I just meant the range. Not
yeah, okay. I was like that he was at 40. He could end up coming up into 20. Okay, I got you on that one.
Yeah. I do want to ask about some of this American side has much better defensive line talent. So you've gone over it once, but that's okay. A lot more names here that I'm intrigued by on this side. We have both Byron Youngs. There's two Byron Youngs on the American side. You have the Alabama interior defensive lineman, Byron Young, and then you have the Tennessee edge rusher linebacker, Byron Young as well. Did any of those two stand out to you?
I didn't see the let's see. There's Cameron Young. I only see one Byron Young, and that's Alabama. There he is. He was number 6. So I did see him. He is someone that I got to see a little bit. 6'2", 248. The guys that stood out for me in this first round for the American team were on offense, dude. They were on offense. The offensive linemen won the day. And every single one of the Alabama offensive linemen looked pretty good out there. And then including, like I said, Cyrus Torrance, a sleeper out there, 59, Nick Salverdi. Saldiveri. I'm a Kennedy, man. It's easy. Old Dominion, 6'6", 311 pounds. He was holding his own going against Mr. Young from Alabama. So that was a good one to watch too. So that was the one I saw. I put in that draw category. So 6'6" going against Alabama DL. This kid coming from Old Dominion. That was a good matchup. So.
A few more here that I'm curious about still on the defensive line. You said the offensive line won, but just checking some boxes for me, some guys that I've seen tape on and be like, okay, I'm intrigued. Derek Hall from Auburn, Isaiah McGuire. These are edge rushers. Isaiah McGuire from Missouri, and also Will McDonald from Iowa State.
Hold on one second.
You're muted still.
I hit it. I just didn't hit hard enough. I know. I thought it too. I'm still a 14-year-old boy. I know. Derek Hall struggled a little bit on the day as far as the 1v1s. I thought, again, that didn't make him alone. He wasn't alone in that one. I did see the Iowa State guy, caught my eye. I don't have much of a scouting report on him as much, just knowing, okay, he won 1, lost 2, that type of thing. And then I'll go through today. Before I get out of here, before I head out today, what I want to have on my channel is the national 1v1 highlights from offense and defensive line. So keep an eye on those. That will make it the 3rd time I will have gone through. And then tonight I want to do the American and then catch up. And then tomorrow I'll drive home, and all next week I'll be pumping out videos from these things. And even in the Dominican Republic. I'm heading to the Dominican. Little programming note next week. I'm taking the first vacation I've had in like 7 years, and I'm going to be cutting up videos while I'm there.
And in 4K. I think it's worth saying you have in 4K. Again, I know you got to get going. A few more names I'm just curious about. We'll run through them. You can stop me here. You said the offensive line on the American team won the day. Here's some names that I was interested in that front. You have John Michael Schmitz, center from Michigan. Some people have him as the number 1 center in this class.
I don't think he was playing center, but really? He looked solid. I don't think he was playing center. I don't remember him snapping the ball.
That's wild.
Anthony coming in says, who are the best corners in terms of performance so far at the Senior Bowl? Anthony, you may have just joined us late. Appreciate you coming in. I focus mainly on, we just had day 1, so we just had 1 day of practice. And I focus mainly my attention on the lines of scrimmage because they were doing more one-on-ones yesterday with the offensive and defensive lines than they ever do on day 1. So it's basically route tree install on day 1, and a lot of it was with the running backs. I swear to God, all I saw was little curl routes, and there were some throws. There wasn't hardly any one-on-one coverage that I got to see. I'll focus on that more today, Anthony.
Yeah. So John Michael Schmitz, interesting because I thought he only played center at Minnesota. So that's intriguing to me. Wanya Morris, offensive tackle from Oklahoma, transferred from Tennessee, former top offensive line recruit, been up and down, but has the frame and the movement skills on tape that I thought looked like it would be a translatable starter in the NFL.
Okay. I remember him being on the far side, almost at right tackle.
Your right tackle. Yep.
Yeah, where he was over at right tackle. Didn't show me a whole lot to begin with yet, but again, it was just these were first reactions.
Yep.
So I'm going through my that team again later today.
And then finally, we kind of talked a little bit about him, but Matthew Bergeron, some people have him mid-second round pick, and Darnell Wright, he was mocked to the Broncos in the first round by Jordan Reed in his first mock draft.
Darnell Wright was good. He's strong as an ox. That was my
strong.
first impressions with him. Is once he's engaged, it's done. The Broncos could use some of that on the offensive line.
He's a guard.
Yeah, that was my impression, was that he was, a strong right tackle. You could probably move him out there, but that he was an interior lineman, and he was just buck strong.
Yep.
That's a good thing. And now I'll really go through and watch him and see his lateral movement and stuff too. But my gut reaction on Wright was once you were engaged, it was done. It was over with him.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. Sorry we didn't talk as much about the wide receivers and the cornerbacks. I will say again, you ask about the cornerbacks. From the reps that I saw, Julius Brents is the one to keep an eye on. He's got like 99th percentile wingspan. He's a really interesting player. And we can just end it on this. And Scott, I think you've said as much before also, but cornerbacks and wide receivers specifically, typically the best players at those positions aren't reaching the Senior Bowl. They are coming out as underclassmen.
Yep.
And where offensive line and defensive line, those are very much, the bodies have to change dramatically from high school to through the college process. So you are seeing potentially, first round, second round guys at defensive line and offensive line compared to wide receiver. You might get a few wide receiver corner. You might get a few day 2 guys, but typically they're the day 3 players at those spots. Typically, not always, but typically.
Skill players are born, and wide receiver and the linemen are built. It just takes a little more time, strength conditioning, development, all that type of stuff. We talked about DeJuan Jones at the top of the, one of the questions I had is like, he wasn't all that great at Ohio State. He's 6'8", 375 pounds. He's probably trying to figure out how to walk and chew gum by the time he's 16 years old, for God's sakes. It's just, if you've had kids or been around kids, a normal child will grow 4 or 5 inches in a span of 6 months, and they're figuring out how to tie their shoes again. These guys aren't normal. They're giants. So they're figuring out how to do things a little differently. But this is why you see standouts coming from North Dakota State and Old Dominion, where all the skill guys, the top skill guys are, you watch it every night on Monday Night Football. Lee Jackson, LSU, Ohio State, Alabama. And then they get to the line, and it's Old Dominion, Akron,
Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa. Little schools like that can't recruit skill players.
Unless you play tight end. I don't know if you want to call those skill players, but all right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us here. I know you got to cut some tape. Any tight end stand out? We didn't talk at all about tight ends. This is this interesting tight end class. Dane Brugler and Daniel Jeremiah have said that he wouldn't be shocked if we had like 10 to 12 tight ends drafted in the first 100 picks.
Yeah, I haven't focused on them, but there was one, I think there was one guy I was like, this guy looks huge. Was it Mississippi? I reckon you'll recognize the name. He was on the American team, tight end. I think it was Luke Musgrave.
Oh, Oregon State.
6'5.5", 255 pounds from Oregon State with 33. When he caught a ball and went down the line, I was like, this guy looks humongous. I was a little surprised he was only 6'6".
Yeah.
But just movement, catching, that athletic look on the hoof, he's a guy. So looking forward to seeing more.
Some people have had him as tight end 1 in this class with his athleticism. He is actually the son of Bill Musgrave, longtime offensive coordinator in the NFL. And he was also I don't know where he grew up, but he is apparently also a phenomenal downhill skier. So that's a weird skill set to transfer over there, but he got injured this season.
One of my son's soccer teammates just broke his collarbone skiing over Christmas, and it's like 16 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy injuries when you get those ski injuries.
Normally it's 6 weeks. Yeah. So
no, but
be careful out there when people are paying you. When people are paying you, you can ski after. I started skiing when I was 30. You can ski after people are paying your bills.
Didn't the Titans have a clause in the contract with Marcus Mariota where he couldn't surf or something? There was like some surfing.
Wouldn't surprise me. Listen, if someone else is paying the bills, they get to make the rules. If I'm paying the bills, I'm going skiing. Yeah. But as soon as you are paying me to be healthy, I'm going to be healthy. So be careful out there, guys. Nick and I will be back tonight on building the Broncos insiders for breakfast at dinner. Wednesday on Mile High Huddle on YouTube. So you can find us on Mile High Huddle at YouTube. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking. I'm sure we'll be talking some more Sean Payton and staff. And I will have much better feel for the overall Senior Bowl stuff. Today was high level. Some of the guys that were standouts. I'll be able to go in deeper because I'll have another day under my belt and I'll be better tonight. We're to my Facebook and my YouTube channel. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Get your notifications. Appreciate everybody coming in. You can find us at coasttocoastfootball.com. Afterwards, if you want to send the podcast to someone else. So I'm going to get moving. I really want to have out some one-on-ones on my YouTube channel for y'all to watch before I head out for practice in just about 2 hours here. So we're going to get going. Nick, thank you so much for joining us from Seattle. Yeah. We are Coast to Coast Football, and we'll see you tonight over at Mile High Huddle, 8 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one, guys.